On the anti-gun legislation before the Senate, we're making good progress in the effort to schedule a series of votes on amendments to the anti-gun violence legislation before the Senate.
If I could have gotten 51 votes in the Senate of the United States for an outright ban, picking up every one of them, Mr. and Mrs. America, turn them all in, I would have done it. I could not do that. The votes weren't here.
And just very briefly, to your last question, what's the efficacy of banning these magazine clips? I will tell you, these are ammunition. They're bullets. So the people who have those now, they're going to shoot them. And so if you ban them in the future, the number of these high-capacity magazines is going to decrease dramatically over time because the bullets will have been shot and there won't be any more available.
I mean, here's the deal. The so-called liberals are authoritarians. They call themselves liberals. They're not. Thomas Jefferson was a liberal. They're not. And they really have dreams. This is like Che Guevara or Mao Zedong, and they quote Mao Zedong taking over. And, hey, guys, it's not like you're breaking into our house and we don't know you're coming. Okay, back off now, crazies. Now, briefly, legislatively, how do we kill this? I mean, what happens between, let's say it passed the Senate? What happens with the House? Legislatively...
Well, it's not finished in the Senate, and I think people can help by pouring out an outrage. And we'll have the names of the 16 Republicans up on our site pretty soon, and we'll be sending it out to people who are on our email list. So if folks go to gunowners.org, they can get signed up for that. That's a freebie. Then you'll know who is who. We'll have alerts that carry email in them so that you can send it to the appropriate member of Congress, and that will help deliver the message. They realize that way we're watching, and if they really don't want to come back to Congress, if they think they're going to be paid off royally for selling us out on this issue, fine, go ahead and keep voting anti-Second Amendment.
My question to you is, how do we defeat this? What will happen in the House now? I mean, I know it hasn't passed the Senate. It's just gotten out of committee. What do we do to shoot this down? I mean, they're doubling down. It looks like to me it's backfiring politically, but they don't care. Larry Pratt, Executive Director of Gun Owners of America, joins us. He was on CNN just the other day. We're going to play this clip later if we have time. If not, it's up on InfoWars.com. And CNN properly said, you know, maybe even more powerful and effective than the NRA. They fear Gun Owners of America. And Gun Owners of America has forced the NRA, and Ted Nugent agreed to this, and he's a board member last time he was on, to get more hardcore. You see, that's why they always say, don't be radical, don't be radical. We're not radical. Everywhere the gun grabbers have gotten control, they've taken the guns. Everywhere they've gotten control, they've taken the guns. And when they register, they take them all. And criminals don't follow the laws. And they ought to be thanking gun owners for a 49% drop in crime rate since 1991 because of gun proliferation being the #1 issue. And that's been done in university studies by, well, you name it, more guns, less crime, by the professors that have broken it down, John Lott and others. So all of this is happening, and they're there collectively saying it's our fault. When he was also on that CNN piece, you can read the article and see the video up at InfoWars.com, Mayors Against Illegal Guns directors said no one in California has had their guns confiscated when they're all over the place grabbing them. If you've ever been depressed, ever been on Valium, ever been to a psychologist, period, you're now mentally ill. Notice how they advertise it and say it's no big deal, and now they're going to, without adjudication, try to take your rights. This is up at InfoWars.com right now. New York State police admit wrongly confiscating guns under new laws. Obama blowing smoke on cigarette tax. IRS violates Fourth Amendment. Italian Supreme Court president blames Bilderberg for terrorist attacks. They're set to release documents. Senator says universal background checks could lead to national registry. No kidding. The ATF's already been caught over and over again keeping those records. Chinese professor says 70-80% chance of war with North Korea. Environmentalist signs petition to ban water. We're not joking. They're now saying it's bad, just like carbon dioxide. Top economic advisors forecast war and unrest. That's the news at InfoWars.com right now. But to give us an update on the state of the Second Amendment and the collectivist war against the Second Amendment, they've got one against the First Amendment as well. They're states' rights, 10th Amendment. I mean, I've never seen such an all-out push and assault. They're putting everything behind it. Gun bill clears Senate hurdle as filibuster falls short in a 68-31 vote. So this is razor's edge whether it's going to pass the Senate. Then there could magically be another Fast and Furious mass shooting. And then they could get it passed. And Katie Bar the Door joining us is Executive Director of Gun Owners of America, gunowners.org. Larry Pratt joining us to break this down. Larry, what is the state of this war against the Second Amendment right now?
Well, we're fighting it out in the Senate, even as we speak. There has been a vote on a motion to proceed, meaning we'll now bring up the gun control bills that Harry Reid has now that we've voted to proceed. There were 16 Republicans that voted with Harry Reid, and some of them were kind of surprising, like Senator Burr of North Carolina. It's possible that at least some of these members were just actively deceived by Harry Reid, who promised them one kind of an agenda for the consideration of this legislation, and he's got it in another mode. I'm trying not to get people lost in the weeds in fact, I barely understand it myself. We've got an attorney that's previously worked on the Hill.
So it's just like Obamacare. It lets them do whatever they want.
They got their way, and then the Republicans will be able to vote on stuff that they want after the damage has already been done on Senator Toomey's bill. Senator Toomey went and made a deal with Chuck Schumer.
Ugh.
And anytime you make a deal with Senator Schumer, that can't turn out well.
Senator Chuck Schumer made this promise about universal background checks.
It won't create any gun registry. That is already illegal, and it will be repeated as illegal in our law.
But 13 days later,
Some of the proposals, gun trafficking, and the one that I've been pushing, which is universal registration. Universal registration.
so when gun owners hear universal background checks, we know it.
Universal registration. Universal registration. Universal registration. Universal registration. Universal registration. Universal
Supporters
registration.
of this bill contend that if we only make background checks universal, criminals will not get guns. But criminals do not comply with existing background check laws. Why? Why would anybody then think that they would comply, the criminal comply with broader background check requirements? They will be driven even more to straw purchases and theft, just as the National Institute of Justice official said. The effectiveness of this bill is therefore highly questionable.
And so that's where we are. We're now taking that up, and the ability to amend with anything decent to change it, whatnot, that's not there because Reid set it up. He set the table, so that's the only thing available for eating. And the Republicans fell for, well, maybe some of them wanted to believe that it would be an open process. Well, it's not. Guess what? Harry Reid doing it his own way, guys, and you're going to get.
And you predicted a month ago, whenever Harry was acting like he wouldn't go along with this, that it was all playing possum. They always do this baiting and switching so that we can't build up political opposition. They always go, I guess you won. I guess we're not going to get it. And then the Republicans, obviously the real power structure, wants to be able to take stuff out of our bank accounts like Cyprus and Europe. They want our guns. This is the global policy. And so a lot of Republicans are being financed by these interests to go along with this traitorous activity. But Larry Pratt, here's my question to you. What can we do to try to stop this, A, and B, do you agree we've got to get on offense? We've got to, quote, be radical. You know, they say don't be radical because it's not radical to say, hey, we've made the crime rate go down. How dare you collectively say gun owners are responsible for 20 dead kids, and if we don't do what Obama says, registering gun owners and all this garbage and shutting down gun shows and private sales, we're letting the families down. I mean, this is so transparent. Instead of running from this, we need to point out how they're using these dead children and go on the offense.
The fact of the matter is that all of these mass murders that have occurred in our country over the last 20 years, with one exception, have occurred in gun-free zones. Many of them schools, but not all. Some of them were in places open to the public but posted no guns. There was a mall in Utah. In a Utah school, you can carry concealed, but in this stupid mall, I think it was called Trolley Square, you couldn't. And happily, there was a police officer carrying concealed off-duty, but still 5 or 6 people were murdered before he could get there. And what they don't want to talk about, and it barely made the news, 3 days before the Newtown tragedy occurred, in a Clackamas, Oregon mall, which was posted no guns, a dirtbag went in and started shooting, killed 2 people, wounded 1. Happily, his gun jammed, and while he's fiddling with that, a good guy with a gun who also had ignored the sign went running to the sound of the shots, and just as the dirtbag was freeing his gun, saw the good guy with the gun, took a few steps in another direction, and boom, ended the whole ugly scene by committing suicide. The police got there several minutes later, which is, frankly, folks, that's typical.
Sure. Thank God that gun owners keep stopping mass shootings. Is this the greatest assault you've ever seen?
This is a very dangerous measure because this completes the effort to have a national gun registry. They're not calling it that, but when they do the background check, they're telling dealers that if the dealer doesn't want to spend hours, many times, waiting on the phone for a clearance, he can use the internet, which they're increasingly doing. So as most of the background checks are done by internet, they get a little notice the first time they do it saying that all the data supplied over this portal is going to be the property of the U.S. government. There's your gun registry.
I bought a .50 caliber rifle last year at a large gun store here in Austin, and there it all was on a computer and said that. The ATF had it all, the questionnaire, everything, the gun, and they've been caught. You were on CNN, and they said, we don't keep anything. They've been caught over and over again, saving all the data.
Exactly, and they've even been seen by many of our members, and I'll bet some of your listeners have seen in stores where ATF is in there taking down all the information. Some cases they make copies, which is actually illegal, but then, hey, wink, wink, we're not making a copy if we sit here and by hand enter it into our computer.
And wink, wink, we ship some guns to Mexico to blame the Second Amendment. Wink, wink, we're terrorists.
Isn't that over the top for chutzpah? The very government that's going to check on whether or not we're worthy of buying a gun, haven't committed any crime, we're not in jail. They are the ones that have killed, by their own admission at least, well, they've been complicit in the murder of some 400 Mexicans, a couple of our federal agents. And then they turn around and say, but, hey, Larry Pratt, you want to buy a gun, we're going to have to check you out, bud. We can't be too careful.
When everybody knows criminals don't follow the law. So what happens next in the Senate? And I mean, give us the legislative process. How do we shoot this down?
Well, first of all, as you and I speak, we're sending a communication to the Senate saying, guys, Harry Reid pulled the wool over your eyes. He didn't play straight. There were people saying, well, they were going to vote for the motion to proceed, and then they would vote for various amendments that Harry Reid said would be possible at that time. It won't be possible. It's only going to be Harry Reid's agenda that you can vote on. And so, guys, get with it. Get back in where you need to be and vote against this stuff. We can still stop this. It can be done, but they need, in the Senate, they need to hear from the folks back home. We'll have the names of the defecting Republicans up fairly soon. There were even a couple of Democrats from Republican states, maybe 2 to 4 of them, that voted right. It wasn't enough to compensate for the hemorrhage. 16 Republicans.
Oh, yeah. Listen, all the favors are being called in. The stops are being pulled out. they're going for this because they want to use Homeland Security to persecute gun owners. New York and California are the model. This is a persecution program.
There's a whole new sort of group of individuals now who, I don't know what the numbers are, that never hunt at all. But they own guns for one of two reasons: self-protection, or they just like the feel of that AR-15 at the range. They like the way it feels. They just, you know, it's like driving a Ferrari. You know, I mean, it's like and so. My impression is there's not the same sort of cultural norm about gun ownership with a lot of people who are buying guns.
All right. The truth is, we know globalists have taken over America. We know foreign corporations are giving money to anti-gun groups in a seditious action to overtake us politically. Larry, isn't this really about a takeover with the government buying 2 billion bullets and armored vehicles and Fox News reporting that they're teaching state police that Christians are terrorists, period? I mean, this is really getting so bizarre, I can't even believe it.
Well, when the government is referring to the population, or a substantial part of the population, as the enemy, and that's what Janet Napolitano, the head of the Department of Homeland Security, has called people who are pro-life, pro-Second Amendment, pro-Constitution, pro-property rights, you name it, anybody who's kind of a traditional American, they're the enemy for this administration, and they don't hesitate to call any of us that.
What is going to happen? I mean, we see them in New York arresting veterans for over 10-round mags. We see them doing gun confiscations all over the country, outside of law, to veterans who they claim might have had PTSD 20 years ago. We see a kid says, we ought to squirt that other kid with a water gun, and they go and take the dad's guns and say, you'll get them back when your son moves out in 8 years, when he's 18. No judge, no jury. The state police are even, you were telling me this privately, but it's an article up at InfoWars.com separately. They're saying, hey, we're being ordered to do stuff that isn't even in this law. But doesn't matter. So the police are even saying, we don't want to do this. This shows how we've got a bunch of Marxists running this country, financed by a bunch of offshore banks. What do we do, Larry? I think we got to call them for what they are, criminals.
It's certainly not legal to violate the Constitution and to talk about setting up a gun registry, which is what the background check is. Don't let them tell you anything else. This is a gun registry. The Department of Justice, as I said earlier, has told dealers, use the internet to do a background check. We own that data. So this has got to be stopped because they've already got a fair number of us on record. You and I bought guns at stores, so we're already there in that database. Not that the two of us are likely to, oh no, Pratt would never have any guns. So but there are a lot of people that otherwise wouldn't be known to the government, and that's how they are now going to be known. We saw them confiscate guns after Katrina. Please don't think that, oh, my government wouldn't do that. They already have done that. And so that's why this battle is so crucial and why supporting something like Steve Stockman's bill, he's the representative from outside of Houston, his bill would take away the gun-free zone gun ban. That's the thing that has been the common element in our mass murders over the last 20 years. It's about time, at least in the schools, we get rid of these laws so that teachers, principals, janitors have the capability of having a concealed carry firearm with them to have an element of surprise, to shoot back, and to make it so it's no longer likely that I'm going to kill more people than the last guy did in this school.
Larry, here's my issue. You've been able to stop with Gun Owners of America a lot of legislation when the NRA was sold out, a decade ago. They've gotten a little bit better because of pressure and your pressure. And that's a good thing. As Ron Paul said, you're the only non-compromised gun lobby in Washington. There's a lot of other great state groups and others. But, I mean, you guys are the ones that are really scientifically on it historically. But, see, they're over the top. They're taking over. They're saying we're terrorists. They're saying we're horrible. They're saying we're culpable for dead kids. They're doing all this while butchering the rest of the Bill of Rights. They're going for it all. And I think we have a tendency to hold back because of this idea that, oh, it's mainstream, you know, to be genteel about this and to not go all the way. But there's no way to not call it what it is. And they are a pack of lying criminals that want to disarm us to enslave us. We have a map we'll put on the TV screen for listeners. I'll have this posted on InfoWars.com. FBI statistics for gun violence. And then it says 2012 voting pattern. And the crime is all in the Democratic blue areas. I mean, if they are criminals. They are a criminal culture. I'm not even a Republican. They're the Democrat light. My point is, look at the Acorn findings, where they go into every other Acorn and they're like, yeah, we want sex slave children. You want to make some cash? I mean, it's just, these people are gangs of lawless lunatics with moron camp followers on welfare behind them. And they mean to have a war. They're training for war with us. There should be a congressional hearing over Obama's new Army manual. Guys, put up Army manual gun confiscation. In it, it talks about getting our Social Security numbers, taking our guns, putting us in FEMA centers. But it sounds so radical when it's the new Army manual that's public. This isn't even classified. I mean, this is red alert, run down the street with your hair on fire, like Paul Revere saying, the New World Order redcoats are here. They ain't coming.
Fast and Furious already took place, and it only stopped when, to the government's surprise, we managed to find out about what they were doing. Over 400 dead Mexicans that we know of so far connected with those guns, and a couple of our federal agents murdered by people using Fast and Furious guns. And it just drives me crazy to think that this is the government that thinks it has the moral authority to decide whether you and I should be able to buy a gun. I'm sorry. I don't think there should be a background check. What good is it?
No,
when
the criminals
is giving guns to the enemy.
What do you think of Snoop Dogg with all of his drug arrest and convictions and murder arrest and then plea bargains and all the gun arrest, saying we need to all turn our guns in? I mean, guaranteed Snoop isn't going to turn in his illegal guns. By the way, it's Internment and Resettlement Operations FM 3-3940. Folks, read it and weep, February 2010. I mean, I'm just sick of these people in my face, criminals saying, turn my gun in. You first, criminal. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, well, I think we might ought to ask the government to start turning in their guns because they don't put them to very good use. This is just, if they really think that guns are the problem, if that's what Mayor Bloomberg, for example, thinks is the problem and you and I need to be disarmed, Mayor, I'll give some credence to your argument, and I'll consider it when I see you tell the bodyguards that you've got to go on home. You're not going to need them anymore. No more armed men around you.
In the spirit of gun control, will you disarm your entire security team?
And clearly their plan is to then persecute gun owners and nickel and dime us and misapply gun statutes like the ATF does, where a guy's AR-15 M4 misfires and shoots 3 bullets in front of everybody. It's a military veteran, no criminal record, and they throw him in prison. I mean, clearly they want to persecute us. As a litmus test, they hate our guts. Being criminals, you have that criminal instinct to go after good men. I mean, what's going to happen? Because it's not just me. A lot of others are saying this is going to become a civil war.
This can only happen if the Republicans let it happen. And if they think they're going to be immune from consequences at the polls, I think they're making a very serious political mistake. There's a more conservative constituency voting in this off year coming up. The drones tend to come out more for the presidential election, but the producers and the conservative, more conservative people are going to be voting. There's going to be primaries. And believe me, we're going to be looking for credible primary opponents to each and every one of these Republicans that votes wrong, that votes to basically do away with the Second Amendment and to infringe away. This is serious stuff. They'd better consider what they're doing. I know that the servers on Capitol Hill have been breaking down. There's been so much contact coming in from us rubes. And they disregard that at their peril.
Well, what do you make of all the FBI and Secret Service and federal marshals? Feds have been speaking out and quitting, like Bongino and so many others. They're really getting, wow, bad guys are really running the federal government. I mean, this is really bad.
And what there's a flip side to that, too. Those that are in, like the Bonginos of the world, these are guys that are highly trained, and if they're not going along with the program, they're your worst enemy, Mr. Administration.
History is repeating itself. We have front row seats to trying to stop basically Hitler in 1935 or so after he's already in. And again, I know Romney was a globalist. Romney basically rolled over. It was all pretty much staged. But I got to tell you, I mean, you know, I've been critical of all these groups, but I'm telling you, Obama is so much worse than I even thought. And I mean, the fact that they're just going for it and shutting our power plants down. And I mean, they're trying to, it's not rhetoric. They're trying to bring America down to collectivize us like Mao Zedong did in China. I mean, and they all quote Mao Zedong. They say our kids belong to them. I mean, they're flaming authoritarian dirtbags.
They're tearing down dams in the West. They want to rewild the country, kind of like Romania, move us all into large urban centers where we live stacked up in high
They're
rises. Admitted
communist. God help us. Larry Pratt, gunners.org. Thank you for always coming on to give us updates. I know you're a very busy man. You know, have a quick 10-minute lunch for your next. I'm going to let you go so you can eat something.
Great to be with you, Alex. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you. We'll talk to you. Folks, go to Gun Owners, sign up, become a member, get the free alerts. We'll talk to you soon, Larry.